Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Top Strategies for Returning to Work After a Career Break, brought to you jointly by the Career Transition Center and iRelaunch. I'm Carol Fishman Cohen, and I'm here with Anita Jenke, and I'm going to turn it over to Anita to introduce herself first.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Again, my name is Anita Jenke. I'm the Executive Director of the Career Transition Center. We're a nonprofit organization celebrating 28 years of service to the community. We empower professionals to find employment using personalized career coaching and training on the latest job search and skills. We work with people across the U.S. So I'm looking forward to talking with you, Carol, and hearing questions from the participants at the end. Do feel free to put questions in the Q&A, and we'll reserve about 10 minutes at the end and review questions. And so hopefully we'll get some really good and challenging ones. So Carol, I'd like to begin by asking you to make sure we're aligned on what a career break actually is. Can you share your definition of what a career break is? And maybe by extension, at what point does a layoff or a prolonged job search become a career break? Because they often start as one and evolve into the other.
Okay, thanks, Anita. And also, I'll just add, I'm Carol Fishman Cohen, CEO and co-founder of iRelaunch. And at iRelaunch, as you can see from our tagline, is normalizing career breaks. That is our mission. And we work with employers to create programs to bring people back to work after taking career breaks. And we also support a community of relaunchers or returners, as we call them, who are in all stages of returning to work. So, and that moves me right into what a career break actually is. So we think about career breaks as like longer than a maternity or a paternity leave. It's at least a year. Originally, the company definition of a career break of companies that ran these programs was 2 years minimum, but we saw after COVID some of them change it to a minimum of 1 year out of the workforce. It could be 1 to over 20 years, and it can be for a whole range of reasons, typically not related to work performance. It could be childcare or elder care, or maybe a personal health issue, or maybe you were in the military and took a break after that, or you were a military spouse, a trailing spouse or partner with someone with an overseas assignment. People unretiring if retirement either didn't agree with them or wasn't what they expected, but also maybe financial concerns. And we can talk later about how financial concerns, divorce, death, or disability of a spouse or partner can propel people back into the workforce, maybe at different times than they were anticipating. But the idea is that if you're a solid or high performer, you don't lose that ability simply because you take a career break. What about you, Anita? Anything to add there?
No, I think that's a good and broad definition. And I think it has evolved since COVID. I also think it's become more socially and professionally acceptable, which I'm really excited about. I think that really makes a difference and gives people kind of permission to do what they need to do for their families. So I really embrace that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think COVID was, if not a turning point, certainly an accelerator in
Yes.
terms of getting people to recruiters, especially managers, used to seeing career breaks on a resume.
Yes.
At the height of the pandemic, I think 4.2 million people had withdrawn from the labor force. And it was about 1.8 men and 2.4 women around that million, 1.8 million, 2.4 million. And that was the beginning, I think, of even more like normalization of having a career break in your background.
I agree. And I think what we saw at the Career Transition Center was that the average age of our clients before the pandemic was about 53. Now it's 43. So there were some folks who exited the workforce, but I'll tell you what, they're starting to come back. We're starting to see, and they're coming back for a multitude of reasons like you outlined. So absolutely, things have changed. And I think in many ways for the better, because I think people are less embarrassed about admitting they had a career break. And I actually applaud people and I tell them, you know what? I applaud you for doing that. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of love to take a break and take care of an elderly parent or, a disabled child or young children. And I think it's important that we recognize the fullness of who we are, and we shouldn't be embarrassed about taking a break. I think that's become very normalized.
Yeah, I certainly agree that traditionally there have been almost a shame factor attached
Yes.
to it. And it's really hard for people to get over that. And that's one of the reasons, and we can talk about this later, it's hard for people to take that step to go public with their job search, because then once they announce it, then people know, and then if it takes a long
Mm-hmm.
time. But we have a resource at iRelaunch. We have a podcast series and we have a mini series on the prolonged career break. And we really get into it with people in terms of the challenges to mental and emotional health
Yes.
when you are on a prolonged career break. So that might be a resource people want to take a look at.
You personally navigated a career break and reentry. Can you share a bit about your experience and what you learned from it?
Sure. So I was a finance professional. I worked for a Wall Street investment firm, investment bank, and my company went under while I was on maternity leave with my first
Oh.
child. So I did not have a job to return to, and I decided we weren't getting any younger. We wanted to have more kids, and maybe I should just like make this a career break and have more kids, which we did. And this was a very long time ago. It's between 1990 and 2001, but I was out of the workforce taking care of them for 11 years. And I returned to work before anyone was talking about this. There was no name, to career reentry or relaunching or programs or anything. And I got hired as a one-off hire by an investment firm because there were people there who worked with me a dozen years before at the Wall Street firm. And that's one of the lessons that I learned, and that we communicate with people who are relaunching and after long career breaks, and then questioning about whether they should get back in touch with people from the past, even though it was like 14 years ago. And we always say you definitely should, because there's no downside. The worst thing is you don't hear from them. But the lesson I learned is that people from the past have a frozen in time view of you. So when you get in touch with them and you worked with them or you went to school, even if you're like in the depths of your feelings in the middle of your career break, you may experience, I know I experience, and we hear this from many relaunchers, a diminished sense of self when we are separated from our identity that is attached to our career. That's just how our society has evolved. But
Mhm.
remember, when you get in touch with those people from the past, they don't know about that. They only remember you as you were when you worked together or went to school. I remember going to a reunion, a 15-year reunion, I think from grad school, right around the time I was thinking about going back. And one of the people who I went to school with was a headhunter. And we had just a regular conversation about, catching up. But then several months later, she sent me she said, this came across my desk and I thought it was a perfect match with your skill set. And so I thought, what skill set is she thinking about when we sat next to each other, 15, actually 17 years before his first year's MBA students. So that's what I mean about frozen in time. And then the other lesson that jumped out at me, and this was actually a factor for me, was when you get back in touch with people from the past, don't forget people who were junior to you. So people who you managed, or maybe you mentored them, or maybe you just knew them, because when you're out on career break, those junior people are moving up, and then they sometimes can be in a position to open a door for you. And that's exactly what happened to me. Someone who was junior to me on some deal teams ended up working and becoming the head of this investment arm. And he's the one who enabled me to go in and interview and ultimately get hired there.
That's terrific. Yeah, I think that really points, just as an aside, to the importance of maintaining your networks and reaching out and keeping them active. It's really about maintaining work relationships as well as, you know, business relationships. So to me, over the, say, 16 years I've been at the Career Transition Center, the perception of career breaks has evolved. And I
Mm,
think that started changing a bit during the Great Recession, when there were longer and longer times out of work, at points 99 weeks. And then some people just decided to pivot, and this was a great time to take care of mom who's developing dementia. And I remember a recruiter at JP Morgan Chase was like, you know what? We don't worry about long-term unemployed anymore. So many people experienced it. I just want to hear what you've been doing, how you've kept your skills current. Have you been doing volunteer work? So, and then the pandemic, as we talked about, really accelerated the acceptance. And then right after that, LinkedIn put in a feature to allow you to put in career break. And that was like, wow, that really is normalizing. This is part of the human experience, that we have responsibilities as human beings to our families. So I'm wondering, have you observed something similar? What else have you observed around career breaks and the perceptions?
mhm. Well, there's so many topics there. First, I want to jump back to the one where you're talking about recessions and behavior during recessions, um, because I think CTC has been around for a long time. So as I relaunched, so we started in 2007, and of course the Great Recession hit toward the end of 2008, and we didn't really emerge from that until like 2013. And we were only a conference company at that time, running the iRelaunch Return to Work conference, which we still run. And I know we have one coming up, and I think someone will put something about that in the chat. But we found we were kind of astounded that every time we'd run a conference, more employers would join as sponsors.
Hmm.
So they were finding out about it and find out about this pool. But we thought, even if they had a hiring freeze, or if they were just lowering their hiring needs had reduced, they were pipeline building. They were thinking about the future. They were pipeline building. And that's something for people to keep in mind. This macro picture of, oh, the job market's terrible and you'll never get hired, that negative input you might get from friends and
Right.
family. You have to work hard to be selective about the people that you choose to let impact your thinking. But that
Yes,
macro picture of the economy's horrible and you're never going to get hired, you have to filter out, because you only need one job, and people got hired all the way through the recession. And
absolutely.
we'll talk about some of those strategies. But I thought that was something that really jumped out. And even if the narrative and the macro narrative is positive, sometimes people negative self-talk to themselves,
Yeah.
saying, wow, everyone else seems to be able to get a job in this economy except for me. So like, you can spin it no matter what the macro picture is, but really
Yeah,
try to keep focus, filter out that kind of input.
exactly.
I guess the other thing about recessions is that we saw, um, if there was a breadwinner and someone who took the career break, and then the breadwinner's job became unstable, or maybe they got let go, then we saw people get propelled back into the workforce quicker than they
Yes,
might have, because they were thinking, we are never going to be dependent on one employer again. We need to be hedged. So that's something else that we saw. But getting back to the perception of career breaks, as you're saying, Anita, I I agree. I think that career breaks have absolutely evolved. I agree with LinkedIn putting that career break section in. I think I wrote an article about this. That to me, that was an enormous like validation that LinkedIn itself would think to have a career break category that you could put in your career path, and that was just part of it.
I
Uh,
completely agree.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I think a lot of the work that both of our organizations have done have helped to normalize the career break and remove stigma that is attached
Mhm.
to taking one. But I agree that recruiters are used to seeing them now, and it's
Yes,
all how you tell the story.
it
And
absolutely is. Bingo. Like,
yeah,
you tell the story with confidence, pride in what you've done. Here's what I've learned. Here's some of the volunteer work. It's people receive it how you share it. You can influence perceptions by your enthusiasm, your engagement, your confidence. Completely agree. So, Carol, I'm I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm wondering what resources and systems of support are available to people looking to reenter the workforce. Naturally, iRelaunch and the Career Transition Center are two. What are some other things that come to mind for you?
Well, I make a point to telling our community to connect with their alumni career services office of their college and university if they have one. Some of them have extensive alumni career services that they offer alumni. Others, it's kind of buried within the alumni association, but sometimes you get discounts to some of these career assessments. Sometimes you can talk to other alums that are in fields or in jobs that you're interested in. You can do mock interviews, and then there can be a source of community there too. I know both of our organizations have community as a
Yes,
key piece of what we do, and I think it's so important, and we can talk about that. But
yes.
that's one set of resources that, in addition to ours.
You know what I would add to that are libraries and faith communities. Because I've noticed in Illinois, there's a real push, especially since the pandemic, the libraries are doing a lot more like in-person and virtual events. And CTC has been involved in numerous of them. And frankly, faith communities. We started out working
Yeah.
and were founded by faith communities, synagogues, churches, Catholic and Protestant. And we continue to get that support. And many of them offer like, employment ministries. They may have like a support group on a Saturday. They may have online workshops. We partner with a number of them. And so don't discount libraries and faith communities as another resource for support. I think those are extremely important. I do want to give another shout out to our great friends at libraries. Many of them have access to the LinkedIn Learning, so you can go in there and access that through the libraries. And you don't necessarily have to pay for it through LinkedIn, which I think is helpful if funds are tight. You can still take the programming and make that clear on your resume. The other thing that I encourage people to think about is upskilling, particularly if you've been out for more than a year, particularly if you were in like marketing and there's been the big shift to digital marketing. I encourage people, if you meet income criteria, WIOA vouchers, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act grants for dislocated workers. There's another one for low-income workers. And at least in Illinois, that if you meet the criteria, you can get up to a $10,000 voucher to use at a college or other organization to get upskill, like say digital marketing certification, project management, huge with our clients these days. But you can also go to like Udemy, Coursera, edX, Skillshare, Treehouse, and there are others to upskill, get some certifications, add them to your LinkedIn, your resume. And that's another thing when employers say, well, what have you been doing while you were caring for your mom? You could say, well, for example, I took some classes at Udemy and I got a certification in, um, say, prompt engineering. I'm really interested in AI and I'd like to, build my career along the line of, using it in marketing and prompt engineering. Or maybe say, I'm really good at dealing with complex situations and problems. So I went back, got a WIOA voucher, and I got certified in project management. They're going to be like, okay, wow, great use of time. Maybe you've been volunteering at, a nonprofit doing tutoring over Zoom. Maybe you worked with an organization like Taproot. They're all over the country. They look for professional volunteers. You could join an effort like that, get assigned to a team and help a nonprofit on branding or marketing strategy. There's so many things you can be doing. So in a way, it's an area of support, but it's also some things you can do to build your case when you are ready to reenter the workforce. So those are some things that kind of come to my mind.
You covered a lot of ground there, and I've been taking some notes, so I'll remember to chime in certain parts of it. So when you were talking about resources for scholarships or grants to do some of this upskilling, there's also the AAUW, I think it's the American Association of University Women, which will give grants for certain types of academic updating, and we have seen some of the returners get grants for doing upskilling. It depends on the course, it depends on the situation, but I just wanted to throw that one into the mix. Really glad to hear about the other ones that you were suggesting. I didn't know about those. A comment on course selection and program selection. You know, universities and colleges have continuing ed, or they have
Yes.
executive ed, or they have individual coursework. And of course, many of these have a price tag associated with them, whereas like a Coursera or an edX, you can access for free. And our employers tell us, even if you do the free version of it, it's fine. The important
Yes.
thing is that you complete it.
Absolutely.
But the comment, the suggestion we have is that if you have the option of doing one of these courses or programs that include a field study or a capstone project, you should choose that option, because we have found that the relaunchers who take a course with, let's say, a field study, they put that field study as a separate entry on their resume in addition to the course itself. And they also find that in interviews, that field study or capstone project tends to be like of great interest, how they took whatever they were learning in the classroom and applied it to a real situation
It's
outside.
very tangible. And when you mentioned the American Association of University Women sororities, like I'm a member of the Alpha Delta Pi,
Mm.
they offer scholarships for undergraduate and graduate degreed sorority sisters if they're trying to like relaunch their career, get an advanced degree. And I also wanted to mention, if you're of a certain age, like me, AARP has some interesting resources as well. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned sororities and fraternities. I completely forgot about that. And I wasn't, they didn't have them at my college, so I wasn't part of it. But I've been kind of blown away by the extended alumni networks and services, and the way the Greek system alumni are organized as far as networking and careers. It's
yes,
very impressive. So if you're part of
yeah,
that network, then definitely something to take advantage of. I guess
absolutely.
the other thing is when you are actively taking a course, and as you mentioned, Anita, as soon as you start the course, you can put that recent and relevant coursework, on your resume, even if you're in the middle of it. But the idea is you're presenting yourself as a lifelong learner, as a curious person. And I know that the employers that we work with really, that's a quality that they really value.
Yes,
So anytime you can demonstrate that, by taking these courses, I think it's a good thing. And then
absolutely.
you also mentioned, Anita, volunteer work, essentially. And
Yes.
so just to throw in a couple of other resources, and maybe you have more to add. So there's, well, actually, this is interesting. Idealist.org and volunteermatch.org just
Hmm.
merged. They merged in January, and I
Great.
used to recommend them as separate entities, but now they're going to be together, which I think is good, because I always felt like one of them was more valuable in this geographic location, the other one in that, and now
Hmm.
they're going to be combined. So those organizations, I guess now the single organization focuses more on role-based volunteering. And
Yes.
then there's this other one, catchafire.org, that is more focused on project-based volunteering. And
Hmm.
they'll break down the projects. A lot of them are remote, and they say how long they'll take and the skills
Hmm.
involved. So that's another resource for people.
That's great. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what are some of when you try and reenter the workforce after a career break, what are some of the greatest obstacles a person can face? And, what recommendations do you have for addressing these challenges?
Do you want me to start, Anita? I know that you
Yeah,
have ideas. Okay. All right. So in terms of obstacles, I think part of this is how long you've been on career break. So, we have people who were on career break for 22 years, and we have people who are on career break for 1 year. So the answer to this question could be very different depending on length of career break, and basically every person has their own unique situation. But
sure.
one of the issues is that we find is people need to figure out what they want to do all over again. And so where are your interests and skills strongest now? Use the career break as an opportunity to step back and reflect on whether you were on the right career path to begin with. If you were, you want to go back to exactly what you left, or maybe something about your life stage means maybe you can't travel all the time anymore, so you go back to something related, or maybe
Right.
you decide you were not on the right career path to begin with, and you have some transferable skills and this interest that you always wished and thought you should have pursued but didn't, and
Yes.
you can go that way. But the key here is you have to get really specific. So like in my field, I can't just say, I want to return to finance. I have to say, I want to return to the regulatory compliance area of finance, or
Right.
I want to return to the I'm just thinking about in consumer product marketing,
Hmm.
data science, get very, very specific, because that is going to drive the rest of your job search, who you talk to, what jobs you apply for, what updating you do. So that's super, super important.
Yeah.
I'll hand it back over to you, Anita, and then maybe we can go back and forth because I have more too.
Sure. So I think to me, in talking to clients over the years, some of the biggest challenges they face are psychological,
Yeah.
sort of the lack of confidence, the not knowing how to explain it, um, you know, self-doubt, like, can I do this? Will anybody want me? Not being sure what's the most contemporary kind of strategy for job search, like how to go about this, because I'll be honest, just in the last 5 years, a lot has changed in the job search strategy,
Mhm.
not to even speak of the last 10 years. So to me, I think it's important that you look at yourself and be honest in assessing yourself. You're right. Like we had a client a couple of years ago, she'd been an attorney, took some time off, about 10 years to be a stay-at-home mom, came back and she realized, I don't want to be a litigator. That's just not where my heart is at. But I really like HR. So she pivoted and got a position as an HR director at a law firm. So she stayed where her skills were current, but she moved into something that was a little more 9 to 5 and more aligned with where her interests and values were now versus being a billable by hour litigator 10 years ago. So I
Mm.
think being, like you said, honest with yourself about, are you really in the same place or are you kind of in a different place? But also, that's okay. You grow, you develop, you gain new skills, new interests, new experiences. So I think being confident and positive about yourself, believing that you bring value, your life experience brings value, and internalizing that. I also think there's some real value in being honest about, if you don't know what you want to do some skills assessments like the Strong, Hogan, Strength Finders. Community colleges, nonprofits offer these. Do some assessments to kind of get a grip on, okay, what is it I really want to do? If you're just not able to figure it out, do some of these professional assessments, and that can give you some insights. Talk to people that you know then and now, and just get sense from people, what do you see as my strengths? You know, do a little bit of interviewing of friends, colleagues, current and past. If you've been volunteering at your children's school or with a faith community, ask people, what do you see as some of my strengths? What do you think are some of the things I've accomplished as a result of this volunteer experience? And start rebuilding your confidence. And I just can't say it enough, but seek out a coach. I think there's some real value in working with a career coach because they can be objective where you may not be able to be objective. They'll see you for the strong, accomplished person you are at a time when you maybe feel vulnerable and you don't think you're that confident, polished. And they can also help you be strategic about your networking and your outreach. So I think the to me, the psychological barrier is one of the bigger barriers in my mind. There are some really great places we've talked about to upskill. So that's less the problem to my mind as getting your head on straight and being in the game and not psyching yourself out. That's so key to my mind.
Right. I can't see all the chat right now, but I saw something jump up that said recruiters are not at all understanding about career breaks. So I just want to talk a little bit about that and what makes the difference. So
Okay.
first of all, the idea that from the person who posts that, what does your job search look like so far? But I know that a lot of people feel like they've put in a solid day in the job search if they have been researching companies online and putting in a bunch of applications. And we always hear from people that, I've applied to 200 jobs and I didn't even get a rejection. I got nothing, back. And so we can both give some suggestions about this, but this idea about taking that next really hard step and get out of the house and have interactions with people. So,
Yeah.
you can call it networking, but let's break it down. I mean, it's basically talking to everyone about that you're interested in, what kind of job you're interested in looking for, and getting them into conversations about their work, because that will then have them ask you. And I'm just talking about people you meet during the course of your day. Maybe you're in a community volunteer organization together, or this is where faith-based groups, like at a place of worship. Someone said that their most important person who ended up making the difference in their job search was a friend of hers met at a church event. Those kinds of conversations, you're sitting next to another parent, watching kids play a sport. But the idea is, ask people about their work, and then they'll ask you, and you can explain that I've been on career break. I can't wait to get back to work. I'm very, very focused on the XYZ job now, and those are the kinds of roles that I'm looking for. And let me tell you one more thing about this. Be
Okay.
prepared to have many, many conversations that don't go anywhere, to
Mm.
yield the few that do. So just keep that in your head. This is totally normal, that I've just had so many conversations with all these people I know that didn't go anywhere, because you have to have a lot of them to yield the few that do lead to an opportunity.
But you know what? Sometimes they may not in the moment lead to something, but down the road, they might. When somebody says, hey, I just
Yeah.
talked to Carol and she's interested in regulatory compliance. I just heard about this role. Let me ping her and email her and send her the link. So you're really, you know, you're plowing the ground and laying the foundation for planting seeds. So not everything has an immediate result, an
Yeah.
immediate gratification, just to be devil's advocate there.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, I see what you're saying. So it may feel like a little bit of a defeat because nothing happened in that immediate conversation, but maybe
Yes.
you'll hear from that person like 2 months from now or something. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing I think is, you know, when you're in transition, which is kind of the word we use, um, I think it's useful after you've met with them and sent them a thank you letter, maybe 2, 3 weeks later, send an update to everybody you've met with and maybe blind copy them and say, hey, you all have made such a difference in my perspective about the job search. I'm making progress. Let me give you a little update. You can tell them, I've met with as many people. I'm narrowing down. I'm thinking this is the direction I want to go in. Here are some of the companies I'm interested in. You know, please share any resources that align with this. And if I can be of help to you, please reach out to me. And in clients who've done that, I have found that to be very successful because not many people go that extra step of giving an update to someone they've met with. I also think there's some value, and this may be a little controversial. This started out in tech, but I think it's really growing. When folks in tech were getting laid off, and they were really experiencing layoffs last year, people were putting into LinkedIn, hey, I just got laid off from Calendarly. I had a great run. I learned so many new things, blah, blah, blah. Got a great mentor. It's time for the next chapter. as you all know, there's been some layoffs. I'm looking for that next great opportunity with a similarly great company. Here's kind of what I'm looking for, and here are some of the companies on my radar. Please reach out if you have any suggestions. And for that matter, let me know if I can help you, because I'm talking to a lot of people and I might be able to hook you up. That to me shows chutzpah, it shows confidence, and it shows graciousness and gratitude. So you could pivot and use that same strategy for yourself. Like, folks, I am returning to the workplace. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time taking care of mom, but I am ready to get back into the workplace. Here's some of the things I've been learning. Here's some of the things I'd be interested in doing. Wanted to bring you all up to date. I'm back in the game and I plan to reach out to you all. Please hit me up if there's anything I can do for you. I think putting it out there in a positive, gracious way, chef's kiss. I think that shows such confidence.
I love that. And are you saying put it out there in the way that people make a post on LinkedIn about that?
Yes,
Okay, I want to
absolutely.
be clear because it's a great idea, and I love how you're saying about telling the story and how you're presenting it. It's great, great suggestion. And one thing that you said about when you're sort of giving an update and asking people for resources, this is also something that you can use when you're reconnecting with people from the past. Let's say you have not kept up with your network, and now you are reaching out to someone from the past who you haven't been in touch with for 5 or 10 years, and you are trying to get back in touch with them, and you use LinkedIn to even find out where they are now. And
Yes,
then you send them a connection request where you are going to have limited characters, depending on what your LinkedIn subscription is. But first, just ask them to connect and just think they'll be mad at me because I haven't been in touch, or they'll never remember me. Just do it anyway, because the worst thing that happens is that they won't respond to you. But almost, I think in every case, when someone has said to us, they won't remember me or they'll be mad at me, we're like, they haven't been in touch anyway either, so they're not going to be mad at you. And it's always been, they remembered me and we got in touch and we had a great connection. But let me just be very detailed here. So you reach out, you connect, they connect with you. Then you have an opportunity to write a message to them where you have much more, you don't have a limitation on characters. And you don't want to be opportunistic here, but you want to reconnect with them and just say, like you were saying, Anita, I've been on career break for the last 8 years. I'm really excited about getting back into financial analysis. I'm working really hard I'm in information gathering mode. So you can say
yes,
I'm in information gathering mode, or I'm working hard to become a subject matter expert all over again. Use
yep,
that kind of language and then say, who do you follow? Who do you think are the experts in the field right now? Who should I be following, reading, podcasts, posts, books, articles?
exactly.
And that is a softball question for them. And then they can like give you an answer, and you don't have to have it. There's no opportunistic, can you help me find a job? There's just that connection. And that is a great way to rekindle the relationship before
Yes.
later you see where it goes and whether it can move into that question about whether they can help you.
Now, I do want to say one thing and leverage off something you said. Just in case it's not obvious, never, never ask someone for a job. You're networking for information or connections. If they feel connected to you, they built a rapport with you, and they know of something, they will share it. It's just a little crass and desperate sounding of you to say, hey, I'm reaching out because I need a job. No, 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 no. That's not gracious. That's not polite. You're really imposing pressures on someone that's not appropriate. There are other ways of being subtle, and everybody knows what the game is. So there's no sense beating them over the head with it.
Mhm.
I want to tell you just a quick story that illustrates your point. So during the Great Recession, so this was what, 2009 or 10, we had a client who had worked at an architectural firm. She had taken about 3 years off to take care of her mom who had dementia, and then came back. And so she had been in her job for maybe 2 years, and then bam, the recession happened. And of course, last hired, first laid off. She
Um,
was very traumatized and struggled. So we have a coach named Robert, and he said, okay, let's flip the deck here. I want you to think of someone you enjoyed working with, you know, before you took your leave for caregiving. And I want you to reach out to him. She goes, I don't know what to say. And he said, well, what we're going to say similar to what you said, just say, hey, I always enjoyed working with you.
Mm,
And I thought I would reach out. And now that, this was back when LinkedIn was first becoming a thing. And I found you on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. So the person responded and said, oh my gosh, yes, I've thought about you too. Let's meet for coffee. They did. And then
mm,
she said, the person she reached out to said, you know what? I'm not an architectural firm. We are actually looking for an architect. Would you be interested? And she's like, yeah. And so within a month, she had a job. Now,
wow.
is this going to happen every time? No, but this is the potential you see by reaching out. So I often challenge people, think of someone you really enjoyed working with, reach out to them and just open the door, see what happens, right? You
Yeah.
you'll never know if you don't try. And people don't think about, oh, I haven't talked to Anita in a decade. They'll be like, hey, great to catch up. What have you been doing? I mean, people are more like,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm kind of glad you thought of me. And if you ask them about their career, people love to talk about themselves. So trust me, they're gonna be like, yep, yep, yep. Yeah, this is what I did, and just be a good active listener. Show gratitude, show graciousness. It's amazing what things like that will open up for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, that's making me realize that kind of got off on a tangent there in responding to the person's remark about recruiters don't deal with my career break very well. So part of what you and I are talking about is this next step of getting out of the house and making these personal connections. And there are a whole range of ideas for this. I'm sure you have them on the CTC site. We're actually in the middle of doing a video tip series right now. I think we've done 20 of them every day or every other day. And they're on Instagram and on LinkedIn if you want to take a look. But the idea is that you have these conversations and with people, and you have a lot of them, and then one of the ones that yield something is really going to be along the lines of they are going to help hand your resume over to someone, and maybe it is someone who you worked with before, and they're going to say, you'll see a career break on here, but Carol and I work together and she's someone you must talk to. And
Yes,
that is how you get over the career break bias, is that
yes.
you need to have a human interact on your behalf. And in order to do that, you have to have these conversations.
And again, I would make the case that how you tell your story will
Yeah.
influence how it's perceived. And I think emphasizing the volunteer work, the part-time work that you did, emphasizing this upskilling you've done, I think those are very important things that can help influence someone's perception. Don't come across as defensive and control your narrative. I think that's just super important. And I think people can respect that. Um, I want to pivot a little bit to talk about two final questions. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure one of the key questions folks have in the back of their mind is, okay, I'm relaunching. I've been out of the job market for a couple of years. How do I figure out the salary expectations? Like, how do I address that? So I want to say a couple of
Mm-hmm.
things on that. One, at least in Illinois, employers are increasingly, and I think there's legislation requiring them to post job salaries and ranges. And I know they are doing that in California, Michigan, and New
Can you
York.
repeat that, Anita? Can you repeat that, Anita? Because you broke up for a second.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So increasingly, legislation is being passed requiring employers to post salaries or salary ranges when they post jobs. So I know in Illinois, I believe it's New York, California, and Michigan. I believe that's right. And it's growing. Increasingly, they're required to post it. And in Illinois, nonprofits have made a commitment to always posting salaries with their positions. sort of to set the pace for corporate employers. So you can right there get a sense of what employers are paying by looking at Indeed, Career Builder, and in Illinois, we have npo.net for nonprofit jobs. You can also look at like Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, salary.com. And I think when you apply, use ranges as much as you can. And you could just say, based on my, conversations with folks and, looking at npo.net, the Department of Labor website that shows you what, salary ranges for different kinds of jobs.
I think Anita.
Oh, I'm sorry. So if you look at those resources, you can come up with an educated guess and share with folks that you're talking to what the salary range are interested in. And also make sure that you're accurate around your expectations. So there are a lot of resources out there, and I think that can really help you, and just share a range and say, what, I'm open for discussion. The general sense is this to this, and give a range. What is your
Yeah,
thought?
let me just add a couple ideas to that. First, we haven't talked about AI. So ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT, say, put in the job description, the actual title and job description, and say, give me a salary range for this role in, I'm going to assume you're in the US, And so definitely start to prompt ChatGPT to get some of those answers. And the other
Excellent.
thing is, talking to your friends who have been working and say, I'm taking a look at project management jobs in, at X company. Can you just give me a ballpark range of what you think the salaries there, a range, not an exact number, but a range of what the salaries there might look like?
Yeah.
Maybe they work at a competitor, or maybe they're just a person who kind of keeps track of these things. So those are a couple of other ways to find out. But yeah, I agree. If they say, what do you expect to be making? And they're not in many states, they're not only do they have to post the salary, but they are not allowed to ask you what you made in your last job.
Bingo. Yes.
And
And
so,
I think there's 11 states and counting that have legislation barring, asking you or your former employer about your salary history. Great, great strides for women, minorities, and folks returning to the workforce. Absolutely. So there are some new protections that make a big difference. So they have to pay you what your value is, not what you were based on what you were paid 10 years ago. Absolutely, Carol.
exactly. So there's one thing it's going to feel off topic now because I'm jumping back to something from
Okay.
before, but I want to make sure that I mention this. So we found that subject matter expertise is A, the antidote to ageism, and B, a great source of confidence building. So what I mean is diving back into your field in a pretty deep way. So not only are you going to follow the experts recommended by your friends or people who you used to work for, or you can ask ChatGPT, great experts, who should you be following? But you want to know, what are the products and services that are offered now that weren't offered before? Why aren't we offering the old ones anymore? How exactly do they work? What's the acronym stand for? What are the mechanics of how they work? What are the controversies in the industry? What are the new developments in the industry? So I'm talking about taking a big, like a really deep dive,
Yeah.
but it's going to help your confidence. Of course, the knowledge itself is going to be great for you to be back on top of what your field is. And it's also going to allow you to get into conversations, let's say, even in like a professional event, professional association event, or in the interview where, but let's just say professional events for a minute. You're talking about something substantive. Did you see so-and-so's article? What did you think about it? I thought it was really controversial. You have something, you don't have to make small talk. You have something substantive to talk about. They're going to be paying more attention to what you're saying as opposed to how old you are or how long your career break is. You're going to be impressive to them.
I agree with that. And I think that another thing you could do is you build your confidence and you learn more is post and share articles on LinkedIn and then comment and invite suggestions, because every time you post, that's going to get into people's feeds and you're beginning to establish yourself as a thought leader.
Mhm.
You're beginning to establish yourself as a subject matter expert, and it shows you're kind of fearless. And I think that's bold. I think that's a great idea. And I'm glad you brought up AI. We have totally neglected that. I think AI is one of the greatest levelers of the playing field for job seekers because up to this point, with the applicant tracking systems and AI, my goodness, it was just felt like the odds were stacked against us. And now AI and ChatGPT, and there's others, level the playing field. I work with clients all the time. They're like, I don't know how to position myself for XYZ job. And I'm like, let's jump into ChatGPT. Let's upload your resume. Let's upload the job posting and say, please revise this resume in light of this job posting and provide me with a cover letter as well. Bingo. Don't accept everything completely as it was provided, but use it as a starting point. It can also bring forth things and analyze things that you hadn't thought about. It's a great tool, and it's a tool, it's not a solution, to help
Mhm.
you be strategic in your thinking. And it can give you some perspectives on yourself that maybe you couldn't see. So I agree with you, and it's so easy to use. We do a workshop about every other month that I teach on using
Mm.
ChatGPT for your job search to, align your resume, to analyze your LinkedIn profile, to create cover letters, to create questions for interviews, informational interviews. It's a great tool. It costs nothing. You don't have to pay the $20. Just get the basic one. I use it every day. I just keep it open all day because you never know what I'm going to need it for.
Yeah,
Don't be
I
afraid of
love.
technology.
And you could even ask that example that you gave, where you put in the job description in your resume. You could say, pretend you're in an interview, and you need to pretend I'm in an interview, and I need to have an opening comment about why I'm so qualified for the
Yes,
job. Give me the script. And again, it's your first draft, but it's like what it helps so much with writer's block. It
it
gives you the
does.
first draft, and then you can react to it, and you can even say, give me some examples of other companies that are hiring in Pittsburgh for this type of position. And they may throw out to you jobs you're not aware of. Or
Yeah,
is there a position that's called something different that might
I like that.
require the same skill set? So,
One
yeah,
thing I also wanted to mention by way of technology is the Career Transition Center licenses a tool called Skills First and allows you to use ChatGPT is built in. So it allows you to create your resume and then insert a job and it'll analyze where there are gaps and formatting issues. But it also allows people to do mock video interviews on like 50 different types of interviews. Whatever you do before you get out there, please do a mock interview. Find a partner, a friend to put you through your paces so you can see how you present on camera. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
great.
I'm sure there's some low cost and free things, but for our clients, it's bundled as a part of their membership. I wanted to
Yes.
ask one question and then we have to pivot to
Yeah,
Q&A.
we should go to Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that final question is culture fit, Carol. So as you're returning to the workplace, you're a little nervous. You're thinking, oh, how do I find a place that's going to be flexible and it's, going to, I might still have some obligations at home. Maybe my mom still needs some medical appointments. How do you gauge that? You have any tips on that?
Well, you really have to decide where you are on that before you're going to go in, because the other side of that is to go in and say, I took a career break to care for my aging mother. No, I took a career break for elder care reasons, which are now resolved, meaning my mother is now in a board and care, or maybe the person died, and I can't wait to get back to work. So are you indicating that you are wide open and you don't need that flexibility anymore? Or are you deciding you do still have ongoing obligations? And what kinds of jobs are you going to look at? Do they need to be
Mhm.
commutable? Do they need to be hybrid? So that's super important, just on the outset. But then I I would first, we have a community. I know you have a community. You could put it into your community and see if anyone has recommendations or knows about the reputation of company XYZ.
Yes,
You can ask ChatGPT. And if you can network yourself, meaning if you know someone who knows someone who works there, you can say, I'm getting really serious about the company and I really like it, but I want to hear an honest appraisal from you about what it's been like to work there in terms of schedules and, the
yes.
culture around that. What
I
do you
think
think,
that's,
Anita?
I think asking questions about, you know, policies around, hybrid work, which I think a lot of employers are still retaining, maybe asking questions of work-life balance and asking, what's the management style here? Tell me about your culture. And I think that's normal to ask these questions now. I really do. I think mental health has really been prioritized by companies and employees. And I think these are good and valid questions. Absolutely.
But I would ask them at the end.
Yeah.
At
Oh,
the
yes.
beginning, you are just hard driving in there about, I took a career break to care for my kids and now I can't wait to get back to work. And the
Yes.
reason I am so interested in this position is because when I worked at XYZ Corporation, we faced very similar customer issues. Let me tell you about one of them. So you
Yes.
don't say, it was ancient history, but 10 years ago when I worked for XYZ, you just say it like it happened yesterday. But
Yeah.
like, so really hard drive in there with those kinds of answers. And then, you can work in some of these questions about culture, but I think you need to make sure that you're messaging to them how serious you are about getting back into the workforce before you're starting to ask some of these supplemental questions about culture. I'm not saying they're less important, but I'm just thinking the order in which you introduce
Yeah,
them.
I would put them towards the end as well as you've established a rapport with the interviewers. If you're getting, and you'll pick up a lot during the interview, how they talk to each other. Do they share the questions? Is one person dominating? Are they gracious to one another? Do they seem snappish? How do they treat the receptionist? And for that matter, how do you treat the receptionist? So yeah, you can pick up a lot. So I guess we should pivot to taking
Yes,
new
I'm starting
questions.
to look, I'm
Yeah.
starting to look at these questions. Okay, so I see this first one. I've off-ramped and on-ramped several times. I stepped back from full-time employment assistant adult child who's now doing well. I'm ready to go back full time. So how do I communicate? I think you could say, I've had a situation with a growing child that required me to step in and out of the workforce, but that child is now in a great place. You don't have to go into detail, is in a great place, and I am ready to jump into a full-time job for the long term. I would say
Mhm.
something like that. And I don't know, Anita, if you anything to add, but maybe
Well,
like jump in.
too, you could just focus on the immediate. Like I recently, I'm returning after a year break, as my daughter was, finishing college and needed some help getting started as an adult. And I'm excited about returning to the workplace and, love to share with you some of the certifications I've joined during this. I think too, focusing, I don't think you need to go back and look at all the various breaks. Just focus on the most recent one. Also, too, a lot of people that are doing breaks, I've noticed, are also doing a little bit of contract and freelance work. So you were taking a break, but you weren't really taking a break. So don't over share that you were taking a break. If you've been doing contract work, say, yeah, and about 3 years ago, I had an opportunity. I had some customers that I could build a small business with, and it was a great opportunity for me to have flexibility. And so I, gave it a go with entrepreneurship and share it like that. So I think, there's something to be said for not being defensive and not oversharing.
I totally agree. That's your personal business, especially your health issue. You don't have to give the details. I took a career break for a family health issue, which is now resolved. It's okay if it was your own. And now I can't wait to get back to work. And you don't have to give any more. Don't feel obligated, like you're saying,
No,
Anita. Okay, I'm just jumping to some of these questions in the last couple minutes. Would you consider it a career break even if you did part-time work and freelance projects? All right, so this is important, especially if you're applying to companies that have an official like career reentry program. So what we always say is don't self-select out. Put a career break section. This is a situation where you want to say, yes, I took a career break this year to this year. And then as bullet points underneath, you could include some of your part-time or freelance projects, but it's under the career break heading, and let them decide whether it falls within their definition or not of career break. And if you're working outside your field, that even better, because sometimes they'll just say you took a career break from your primary career.
Yeah. And I think it's depending on the context. If you're looking for a reentry program, obviously emphasize that. If, on the other hand, you are not, and you're just looking to get back full time, you could explain that, you had a small business you were running or you were working part-time, so you could provide elder care. That situation has been resolved, and you're now ready to get back to a full-time role. And I think they would be kind of impressed that you were able to manage elder care if you've ever dealt with the elderly, trust me, and keeping a business going. So again, come at this with confidence and pride that you made it work. And again, how you present is often how people will receive. Show your enthusiasm, your engagement, show your excitement about the next step.
Yeah, exactly. I see one here. What if you didn't take a career break? So you were laid off, okay? And the person's saying, and no one is hiring. Okay, so again, I would challenge that statement. No
Yes.
one is hiring. That's the macro negative input that you may be getting or feeding yourself. So you need to follow a lot of these same strategies. You need to decide, am I going to go looking for exactly what I did before? Let me step back and make that decision. And then if I am, then do I have some updating I need to do, even if I've been in the field? So I'm really conversant in the language. And then I would do the same thing as we're recommending. Get out of the house, have conversations with people. Yes, you can be researching companies on the line and applying for jobs all you want as part of your job search, but taking that next step. Here's another one. Join Toastmasters. The Toastmasters, where everyone's working to become a better public speaker. It's like $50 every 6 months, and everyone there has the same goal. Most of the people are working. When they hear that you're working on you're looking for a job, they can be part of your new network now. So that's another example. But I would try to filter out that no one is hiring frame of mind, and focus on many, if not all, of the tips that we've been talking about here today.
Yeah. Yeah. And there most definitely people are hiring. We had a booming month in February with clients landing. I mean, it was like, felt like every day there was a new client emailing us, we've landed, yay, So
Yeah.
it is landing. Things are a little chaotic right now, but people are getting interviews, they are getting offers. We have a client who's been unemployed for a couple months. She's getting a little nervous, so we're now looking at helping her find a part-time job and resurrect her business so that if the economy continues to be a little wonky, she's got some means of income as she looks for a full-time job. Totally valid approach. I think you have to be flexible and fluid in these kinds of economies.
I see we have a lot of questions here and we're at time. So let me do this. And Anita, please chime in what your take on this. But as I said, right now we're running this video tip series, and every day or every other day we address another issue. So I'm going to copy and paste these questions and see how many I can address by one or another of our video tips. We're going to try to do 100 of them, so we get to a lot of topics, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of the questions that weren't answered today.
Yeah, and the other thing I would suggest is if somebody wants to go to the CTC company page, post the questions, and Hope and Jennifer and I, my team, would be happy to answer them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a link to our company page, and that way you can go there and post them, and that will give you an opportunity to get a response. The other thing I would say, and I put in the chat, there is information. You can go on our website and sign up for a new client orientation or attend a public workshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat. I can find it.
So while you're putting that in the chat, I'm just going to say go to iRelaunch.com, get on our mailing list, find out when our next conferences are. They're all with employers that are interested in hiring people who have taken a career break.
Terrific.
A job board, look at, listen to the podcast, lots of resources there. So hope that you can take advantage of those.
So I'm going to post questions and I'll put them on our LinkedIn page.
Excellent.
We'll be happy to answer them. So yeah, reach out to us. I'll go ahead and put our email address in the chat.
Okay, someone's asking about fees. With iRelaunch, there are many, many free resources, and there are some where there's a fee attached. We try to keep the fees minimal. The exception would be for coaching, which tends to cost more. I don't know, Anita, if you want to talk about the coaching services that you
Sure,
have.
absolutely. So we consider ourselves to be a coaching organization. So if you're interested, what we do is we ask people to come to our new client orientation. It's held once a week. And once you've determined, you're oriented on Zoom, so we can work with people anywhere. Then what you can do is decide if you want to join. You join for 3 months, and you get access to 12 coaching appointments, one each week, and as well as, access to 10 or 15 workshops, live workshops, our YouTube channel. And then we also have Skills First that uses AI to help you revise resumes and prepare for interviews. So we do a lot of fundraising. So if you are unemployed, you'll pay $419 for a quarter. That gives you 12 hours of coaching, and it's $527 if you're employed. We also have scholarships available, and we also have payment plans. So just reach out to us. I put info in at ctcchicago.org. Reach out to us, and we are happy to be of assistance. We don't turn people away. We meet you where you're at.
I don't think I've heard of a better, more favorable arrangement for a job seeker than what Anita just said was offered at the CTC. It's quite amazing.
Thank you. And definitely attend the iRelaunch conference. You'll get to network, you'll meet people, you'll learn about. I saw several questions in the chat. Which employers have relaunch programs? Go to the conference. You'll be able to learn all about that, and you'll learn more about how to position yourself, what resources are available. There's so much out there, and thank goodness for the internet, right? So many resources. It makes it so much easier now.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's been wonderful to have this conversation,
Absolutely.
Anita. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity. I've learned a lot today from you. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing the reactions from people who have attended, and I hope it's been valuable for everyone.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, Carol, and hearing from everybody. Keep your game face, be positive, reach out. You're going to find work.